stream on YouTube and elsewhere about if you stop so people have been the good council picking up the rubbish, reporting things, doing little jobs, pretending to clear up the drugs in here, that sort of thing. Then you get your foot under the door. Do it that way, then you can bring in what we really think later on when it's too late. The same process that happened in the 1930s in a different country across the water, we ended up having a world war over it. So it's those processes, but Nick Griffith is exceedingly clever at that sort of thing, and people like Michael Coleman, who is one of their regional organisers, has learned from the best that sort of stuff, and he is very proficient at it. And that's the way they grew in the city. And it's having to tell people, okay, they're picking up your rubbish for you, they've done that for you. Shouldn't we be changing the policy or making sure the policy at the council and the council is right, not coming around and picking up the rubbish in your yard just for the little bit of it. Just making sure it's picked up every week because the policy's right and the system's working right. That's what you've elected them for, not to come around and be this good person that's taking away your rubbish on one occasion. But that's the way we get the message across. It's quite subtle. And to be honest, we've got to learn to use that way ourselves in some way so that we get our message across. So it becomes an automatic thought as well that that's wrong, you don't do that. Instead of the way they've actually got their message through, in the other way. I think there's a lot to be learned about making things the norm and being a right thinking individual and not standing there and messing is the right thing. Just touching on the Seminol's coverage of the Holland trial. The actual articles on the trial were very well written, very balanced articles. When it came to the editorial, I was a little surprised because the article was got Trent who is a massive Paul Vale fan, the one football team that is massively in support of keeping racism out of football, etc., etc. So I was a little surprised at that because it wasn't a matter of using a couple of nasty words. I think all of us in here do not want to get the BMT or the National Front, the oxygen of, that sort of publicity at that level, nationally and internationally, that, for a few nasty words, we had more reason to challenge it, but we don't want to do that. But straight after the riots in London, to start saying that people, if you've got dark skin, were genetically predisposed to break the law, and other nasty comments that bang out of order. And in this city, you've been having similar items on websites about the mosque going up and shouting all the riots. There was two guys put away trying to blow it up by attaching a hose pipe to the gas mains. And there's all people that lived around there that could have blown up along with the mosque. So the incitement was there. The trouble is, as with a lot of court processes, it takes a whole year to come round. He had the opportunity to go to magistrates in March and elected to go to Crown. But the context of that was there, all out of context. And it looked like we were just having a go at people making comments. And actually, his comments last year in August, September, straight after the riot, which he referred to as dog eat riots, and went on with all sorts of other disparaging words. In context, we could have had even more trouble at that time. So, I think it was the right thing to respond to complaints. He hasn't come forward, but the person who did make the complaints to me originally is in the room, so I don't name him because I haven't done all the way through it. But he is a brave person that asked me to look at it in the first place. What did you report it? What did you deal with? I was in the shop that there wasn't so many of us reporting at the time.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Bill has said that he wants to give a response to something, so I'm just asking to try and keep it out of the rest.
I'm sorry if I didn't make myself clear, but I don't want anybody in this room to think I'm seriously suggesting. David Cameron once famously said, "Hug the hoodie." I'm not seriously suggesting hug the fascists is a sensible response to committed political activists of the Coleman or the Griffith time. They have to be dealt with in a completely different way. What I'm saying is we have to distinguish between kind of hardcore, or relatively hardcore political activists who are still committed. We all know that Griffin is exactly the same fascist as he was when he was a member of the NF. He's not changed. His story's changed. His picture's changed. We have to deal with them and Coleman and very different way. What I was saying was that for people whose connections with and commitment to the BNP have a slightly different basis, may need to be treated in a slightly different way. And simply shouting fascist at them is perhaps not the right way of approaching it. So I just want to be absolutely clear that I'm not saying that we should give Nick Griffin a nice big hug and he can come round to it and become a social democrat. He won't.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I mean, I'm just of the opinion a racist is a racist. You have to confront it no matter who they are, what their position is. You can't let them get away with it. And it sounds to me as if you're saying, we don't change. And that's not good enough. It's not where I'm sitting from.
We can probably get into a debate, but it might not be very useful for everybody else to hear. I'm quite happy to respond if you'd like me to.
I'll see the delegate in the yellow bit.
Yes,
Sorry.
I'm Tom Fisher. I live in Stafford and I've worked in Newcastle Line for 23 years. And Newcastle Line is right next to Stoke-on-Trent. I'm very, very aware that Newcastle Line is very different from Stoke-on-Trent. And Stafford is equally different. And I wonder if John could actually give us some indication of why the report is actually about 3 areas. And being laser down as only the Stoke-on-Trent bit. But why are these 3 areas so distinctive? And why is the culture in those 3 areas different from a place like Newcastle Line, which you could drive through Stoke-on-Trent into Newcastle and not know that you were going from one town to the other, and yet the cultures are different?
Sorry, can you say, just repeat a bit of that again?
Yes, different cultures respond differently, and having lived in Stafford and worked in Newcastle, and the racism in Stafford, the racism in Newcastle the line, and yet Stoke-on-Trent is different. You can't see where the differences are. Well, obviously it's much more working class in Stoke-on-Trent than Newcastle the line. It's a much more middle class area, as is Stafford. Yet there are working class areas in both those 2 towns, and they don't generate the BNP. And that kind of response. So what is about these 3 areas in your report which makes those different from other areas that appear to be similar on the surface?
I think something that's been echoed quite a lot tonight. I hope I didn't betray this at any point, but I don't associate racism simply with the white working class. I think that yes, there may be poor areas of certain places, but I don't think that racism can just be put at the door of A, people who have less, or B, areas that have less. And I think that, the question about Newcastle, the area, I don't know Stoke that well. I don't know Stoke as well as you do in that sense, in terms of history, in terms of living in the city. And so I can't, in terms of that real kind of lived answer, I don't know the answer to it. I think that people here have a much better idea than what I do. And I think that is also a big point about somebody, you can't tell, I can't tell people about their own history, I can't tell people about their own area in that detail, and I wouldn't want to, but I suppose my point would be to that initial point, I would want to say, I would want to really clarify that. I don't think that racism is just solely reducible to poverty. I think it's quite misleading of me if I suggest that that's what the case is.
So, the gentleman over to my left there indicating something.
My name is Richard Sibley. My background is teaching, teacher trained unionist, school government. I've lived and worked in Stoke for 38 years. I won't go through all that background again. My concern is the overall context and the challenges that we face at the moment. Here in Stoke-on-Trent, as an educationist, I'm obviously very, very concerned with the fragmentation of the secondary education and also primary education. I'm obviously very aware that the city's under tremendous pressure from central government to continue further round of cuts that will, which could be potentially devastating. I suppose my question really is in a sense directed at Darwin. I wonder about the capacity of the city to respond to situations that I faced on a professional level several years ago, when during the time of the rise of the BNP in the city, when they were working very, very hard to destabilise communities and work through the schools. And one way in which we were able to counter that threat was by the, to use the phrase, multi-agency approach, which was working with, in fact, the city council were the key people because they coordinated work with the schools, with organisations like Citizens Advice, and various other groups, not least NorSCARF, to work within the communities and work within the schools with young people. Now, because our school system in the city is fragmented, because we face cuts that we've never faced before, there has to be a serious question about the capacity of City Council to respond to these very real challenges. I'd just be interested in the response.
Well, firstly, it is the responsibility of parents, teachers and communities to make sure that message gets across to children. In respect to Stoke-on-Trent, recently, I wasn't directly involved, but I know Councillor Profess was. We had some children in here because we wanted to discuss democracy and wanted to discuss the situation that we were in and share that with school pupils to kind of contextualise what we were doing here with them. So I think that has a knock-on positive effect in terms of wanting to feel part of the city, and it has a positive knock-on effect in terms of community cohesion. We do have a community cohesion team in Stoke who work with communities. We have funded a project called Game On that focused on improving cohesion and outcomes in local schools, which was very successful, and we look at building on things like that for the future. So certainly, it is on our radar in terms of schools are very important. Alan Dutton is our representative on the cabinet for education, and I know he comes very strongly in the importance of making sure that we combat racism and give children an understanding of other communities within Stoke-on-Trent schools. So certainly, yes, absolutely, it is definitely on our radar, and that was clearly shown in the importance given to bringing school kids in here recently to talk about the budget, to talk about democracy and what it actually really means here in Stoke-on-Trent. But I think you've raised some very good points, and it definitely is on our radar. Thank you.
Can I just Jason quickly? Jude is indicated interest. Can I just quickly clarify? Jude is signalled that she wants to speak, as Jason. And there are two gentlemen in the audience, and then I'd like to move on to talking about what will happen from now on.
Just very quickly, I want to respond to what Richard said, but also coming back to Angela and Mohammed's point about what do we do. And I do think work around schools is incredibly important, and I think we've been, parents and challenging staffs of doing some work in school. It's limited because we don't have the resources either. One of the other projects I'm involved in at CAB, we take a project about refugees and asylum seekers into the schools. What I would say, and I don't want to be Pollyannaish about this, but what I would say is the response from the young people has been tremendous. I don't think my workers have suddenly come back exhausted and having had a fairly difficult time of it initially, but actually talking to young people about what is fair and what is right, and letting them see how hurtful and destructive and unfair the kind of treatment that groups get, some people get, just because they're different in some way or another. This isn't just race, this is talking about homophobia and targeting disabled people as well. But the response is very good. The reason I think, though, you've put a finger on something very important that sort of was much easier to do in previous years, partly because of more resources, but also because the LEA's role in this was much, much easier, and having the academies is much more difficult. Some of them are fantastic and invite us in, others don't seem to be interested, and I think there's a real struggle we've got there to try to make sure that we're actually getting the message, which is very effective when we're actually able to work together to do that. And I think it's a very, very important point that we should try to take forward.
Okay, thanks so much. Two gentlemen over there have indicated for quite some time, so I'm going to let them jump in here as well.
It's just to answer the chap here who asked about the difference between Newcastle and Stoke. I think it's worth pointing out that there was a real collaboration between UKIP and the BNP, and there was an agreement that the BNP wouldn't field candidates in Newcastle and Stafford, and UKIP wouldn't field candidates in Stoke-on-Trent, and that's the real and only difference between Newcastle and Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent.
Thank you. I mean, I'm not going to say a lot. I mean, to me, it's just the sadness and the small-mindedness that is racism itself. I mean, why don't people realise that people are just purely people? I mean, this country is built up of what can I say, a very cosmopolitan race. I mean, we've been invaded by Romans, Saxons, Vikings, you name it. We're all a mixture of everything. I mean, my ancestors came over with the Normans. You know, I mean, to me it just saddens me that people just can't live with people because they're people. It doesn't matter what colour the skin, who they are. It's just, to me, it's just totally sad. And that's all that's all I want to say, basically.
I see Bill Burton, if you could make your way closer to a microphone so everyone can hear you. As after Phil, I'd like to move it on to a slightly different topic.
Cheers. I just wanted to say a couple of points about the other Stoke-on-Trent, the Stoke-on-Trent that's worth celebrating. And just this last year, well, there's been two examples that have really stuck in my mind. The first is the celebration that we've had in the city recently of the 70th anniversary of the assistance this city rendered to Medici, which was the village destroyed by the Nazis in 1942 for its reprisals against the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich. That is a clear example of the labour movement of this city standing up against fascism and rendering real assistance to victims of fascism. The BNP certainly don't want us to know about that. The far rights and racists in the city don't want us to know about that. So I'd like to thank particularly Andy Platt, who sat over there. He's been flying the flag for that particular celebration of the party, and the work the City Council and others have done around that as well. The second point I'd like to make is, I understand it's quite embarrassing to start next to Sarah Hill right now. But in the Eastern Fields and Trendale by-election, I canvassed an old miner. He must have been in his early 90s or something like that. And he said to me, he said, "Young man, I don't understand this racism law, because when I was down the pit, it was like the League of Nations down there." And I think that's the point we've got to remember. Stoke-on-Trent has been built on different waves of immigrants for years and years. And again, the BNP don't want us to know that, don't want us to remember this, because if it's reminded, if we are all aware of the roots of this city, they'll just flow apart. They'll go nowhere. Cheers.
Now, as a speaker mentioned earlier, this is in danger of becoming a talking shop where we just discuss whether or not racism is as bad as we think it might be, and how we view the city as a racist pit or as a wonderful place, the wonderful place that it is. I think one of the most interesting points that has been made, one of the most interesting things that's been said, is Jason's point about asking the council to restart the Equalities Council. I was just wondering if anyone would like to feed back on that or give their views on that specific issue, how we can move forward. Because if you think about it, the problem is regardless of whether or not the stats are increasing because racist crimes are increasing or because more people are reporting, the important thing is that racist violence is still happening. Any level of racist violence is completely unacceptable. We need to prevent that. So if there's anyone specifically from the council that would like to give some feedback on it, that would be much appreciated.
I think we've contextualised the debate in terms of, at the start, talking about combating the social conditions, and it's absolutely at the core of this Labour Party administration to make sure that we encourage the government and some of the causes that have been identified that actually create the conditions that can result in racism. You know, that is a priority. In terms of, I think, the ownership in terms of combating racism, I think we made it clear tonight that we all have ownership of that. And it's something that, you know, schools should take cognizance of, and certainly all groups, that should be at the very heart of, you know, in terms of what they do. In terms of the City Council, I'd like to make it clear that, you know, we do support a number of groups at the moment. Challenge NorSCARF is something that we support, and we also have supported Game On. We've supported the LGBT network. The City Council fund Arch at £2,000 and £20,000 a year to work with asylum seekers and refugees to provide advice, assistance, and reablement and support. The Community Cohesion Team, which are funded by Stoke-on-Trent City Council, have assisted to resettlement and support project to reduce the level of segregation and to dispel myths about gypsy and traveller community at a sum of £4,000. And I'm sure there's a lot that I'm also not aware of in terms of the Community Cohesion team could tell you about in terms of the work they do. So it certainly is the case that we do fund a number of projects. It certainly is the case that I can say that I believe it's something that we need to all own and all take responsibility for in terms of social cohesion and making sure we create the city that we want for ourselves and for our children. And it's certainly that is the heart in terms of what we believe in terms of future, in terms of creating the social conditions that won't provoke people to be racist, in terms of our employment agenda here in Stoke. In terms of directly answering the question, it's not something that I can directly answer at this point in time, but we have to look at funding a number of groups, and your request would have to be in the context of that. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to chip into the debate of the future? We've only got 5 minutes left, just over 5 minutes left. So I see that if you could go get yourself nice and close to the microphone.
I'm got a microphone here again. I fully agree with the need for an equalities commission in the city. The problem is we need to do a whole lot of work, decide what we want it to do before we decide that. I remember the old RBC very vividly. It sort of spreads things. There's some ex-employees in the room, one left in the room, I don't know what's gone. There's a hell of a lot of good work done from there, but sometimes it seems to wander and lose its way. So I do think we've got to be very clear about what we would want from it, what its priorities are, and everything else. And another thing is the funding elements for this. The National Equalities Commission has very little funding spread around. So we have to find out very carefully where we can get lots of funding from, because we won't just need a bit of support on the staff, we need premises, we need everything before you know. So there's an awful lot of work to be done before you actually get started on this. So I do actually support the need for this. I always have done. I actually felt before the closure of the RBC that we should have had an all equalities one. But generally, if you've got one is and you've got them all, and the LGBT community at the moment is seriously struggling. When you've got a professor who's transgender at Keele Uni, who doesn't always report, very often doesn't report stuff that happens to her on a regular basis, we're not going to get Dominic and Harry on the street reporting either. So we've got an awful BNP did try to get into some of the class areas in Newcastle under Lyme, and I can't remember it was Christmas or not. It was the women that ganged up and ran them out of town, so we don't want you in, and they never went back, and that's what we did for the union. It was interesting.
Would anyone else like to feedback in the very short amount of time we've got left? Well, at this point, we'll close up this evening with a few short words from Jason before we do that. Remind everyone that the importance of taking part, as Alvin said, taking hold of this ourselves. Everyone here should, if they are not already, be a member of North Staffordshire Campaign Against Racism and Fascism. There should be plenty of leaflets around, so there's no excuses. Trevor at the back there has some sign-up sheets. If you haven't given us your contact details already, then you should. Trevor will be collecting that on the way out. Yeah, and if everyone could please make sure that they do sign up, and we'll keep you informed on the continuing campaign. Not just keep you informed, but hopefully see some of you at future meetings and events. So I'll now hand over to Jason to give his closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do welcome Joy's comments on the Equalities Council. We recognise that it's not going to be easy, but we want to place it on the agenda, and I hope that those councillors who are here will take it away with them, and that it will be discussed in the appropriate places, and we will support you from NorSCARF. As Gary said, the membership forms are in the place, so those sort of purpley things. Please become members of NorSCARF. It isn't expensive, it only costs you a few pounds, and we do need your continued support. So please do that. Either fill the forms in tonight, give me the money, or take them home and post them to us. Please take literature, badges, pens. Everything's free except for the latest edition of Searchlight magazine, which we do charge you £2.50 for. Or if you want a t-shirt, give us a small donation for that. Otherwise, everything else is free. Please help yourselves. I'd like to thank you all for coming. This has been a very well attended meeting, and there's been some very thoughtful contributions, not only from the speakers but from the floor as well. I hope that there will be an outcome to this meeting if we do go ahead with setting up the Equalities Council. So thank you very much for coming, and thanks to all the speakers for their excellent contributions. Thank you.